of Rhode Island.
I'm Catie, your host for today. We also have Josie Ray and Bill Hannon joining me in today's episode. And our guest today, she's a healer. She reads cards, and it's always interesting to see, how people come into this though, and how long they've been doing this work, and how our network grows. So our guest today, her name is Catie Stone. She reads mostly cards, tarot and angel cards, and I think that's another kind that you read too. So let's just get started in how you get started in this and what got you interested.
Absolutely. So I'm 25 years old. I'm going to start with that. And oftentimes I always see everybody who gets into this practice, if you will, sort of falling into it, right? And that's essentially what happened to me. I'm thinking age 10 or 11, I'm going to bed after school, I pass out, and suddenly I have this dream of a child sitting next to me on a school bus. And I remember very specifically, he was wearing a green t-shirt, and he wrote the letter G in like a foggy window next to me. And he says, "Tell your mom I'm okay, just tell her I'm okay." He starts rambling a little bit, I don't really hear anything else, but I wake up in a sort of cold sweat, kind of forget about it like a true 10-year-old, my mind is elsewhere, video games, things like that. I end up remembering this about a day and a half later, and I look at my mom and I was like, "Hey mom, really quick, Greg said he was okay." And there was a just drop because I didn't realize I knew his name. And she just starts crying. And it turned out that Greg was her boyfriend who had traumatically passed away when she was, I believe, 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
And through that, I sort of started exploring, right, how is this correlating? I've always been a person of science. I'm always just looking at the statistical possibility that someone in a dream came to me. And through that, I just sort of explored metaphysics, if you will, tarot, things of that nature. And that led me to crystals, tarot reading, really everything. It just sort of was an explosion of, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to help people. I'm meant to heal people, even if they're no longer in this realm, if you will. So it really, I guess my deep set practice started when I was 14. And I started reading tarot. My brother actually got me my first tarot deck when I was 18 years old.
Wow.
I had angel cards before that.
Right.
I was always reading them. They were just so cool to me. I was like, yeah, we should do this, by the campfire or something.
Yeah, right.
It was more of like a fun thing as opposed to recognizing this is what I'm meant to do. I just knew it was always going to be with me. And started reading when I was 18, go off to college, study forensics, study history, all this other stuff. And tarot was always there for me, if you will. I always looked at it as am I stressed out? I'm gonna read tarot. Am I, going through something? I need guidance. And oftentimes the guidance was coming from me, but also coming from the cards.
Yeah.
So come the pandemic, I'm sitting in my room and I just said to myself, I need to make a change. I'm in grad school. I don't know if this is necessarily what I wanna do. I love this degree, but I need to do more. I just had this sort of snap, and I was like, I'm gonna create a tarot card reading business. And I did, and it was one of those things where, I lightly started advertising it on social media, fear of people kind of lashing out because I'm a Virgo, so naturally I was just mildly afraid of announcing this. And then I just went all in, and I announced it. And the support and discussion that I've had through this, I don't like to call it an industry, but through this community has been just a total outpour of love. One of my biggest, I suppose, the thing I love the most is tarot education and talking to people about how tarot can influence your life, not in the telemarketer sense, but more so in the communicating sense.
Yeah.
And, I actually, more often than not, I'll have people come up to me and they'll just be like, "Why do you do this?" And I explain, because I love it, because it gives me passion, because it makes me happy. I go home at night and I feel genuinely accomplished.
Yeah.
And it's just become, a total outpour of love.
Yeah.
I love it.
Can you also say that you feel connected with something higher than yourself, with a divine force?
Absolutely. A lot of people say that they practice with deities. A lot of people say that they reach out to other beings, if you will. And the one that's been in my life, my entire life, even before that initial spark where I had that dream, it was actually the Egyptian god Horus. And I actually have his eye tattooed on my ankle, and I got that before I was really starting my business. It was just sort of I know I want this to be my first tattoo. This is a representation of something I've loved my whole life.
Yeah.
And every day I see hawks, his representation.
Yeah.
I have a little altar in my room to him, and I also have an altar to goddess Freya, as well as to angels and things like that. You know, it's one of those things where I just feel so divinely protected with this and being able to really help people discover that part of themselves as well. So I do feel divinely protected and guided, whether it be a specific god or goddess or whether it be my family members who have passed away. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's great though for guidance and helping people like get answers in what direction that they sure that would work best for them.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
in whatever question it might be. Yeah. So what's the more popular questions you might get?
Oh, that's such a,
Yeah, I know there's a few.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let me think. Oh my goodness.
It's probably love or like what should I do with my career?
Yeah, what should I do with my career?
Yeah.
You know, a big one actually is how can I heal from XYZ? How can I move on from this circumstance? And oftentimes it'll be folks who come to me who are sort of stuck in a rut. And they'll walk up and they'll just be a little intimidated. They're like, all right, I'm gonna walk up to you because you have a friendly face, even though I don't know what's going on. So they'll just be like, how does this work? I suppose how does this work is probably the most common question. And from there, it's more so, how can I connect myself to this so that I get a better understanding of what you're doing? And nowadays, I actually say, I'm merely the translator. I'm the intuitive translator. You know, the reading is not for me. If it's for somebody else, of course, it's for them. And if I can help them understand the cards and what I'm interpreting, then if they can take a grain of what I'm saying to them, I know I've helped them. So yeah, how can you help me? What is going on? How do we do this? You know, what do you read? So those are the...
Have you noticed when you do readings that sometimes there's a bit of a reading for yourself?
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's, you know, if it's pay more attention to something that they need to do, there's something that you remember
Yes,
you need to do.
I always make this joke where I'll be reading and I'll just be like, wow, that was a good piece of advice. I should really listen to that, you know? And it's so funny, you know, we say we can give great advice, but we rarely take our own. And I've started actively going on a mission to take my own advice.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're saying these things to somebody, the long goal, I suppose, is to make sure that you're also living it so that what you're saying is ultimately true.
Yes.
And I've noticed the more that I practice this, the better I am. In regards to my readings, my intuition, and things of that nature.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
Right, so one of the things that you just said before Josie's question was, it's your interpretation of what the cards. Don't the cards generally have an expression relevant to what you see on that?
Absolutely.
But then it's your interpretation of what that means
Yes.
in relation to what the person's there looking for?
Absolutely. So one of the things I always say is take the deck with a grain of salt, right? So say we're looking at the card that we were pulling up earlier, like the world, you know, the Wheel of Fortune, things of that nature.
Right.
You can do the general arcana interpretation, and I'll use that as sort of a puzzle piece into the overarching you know, interpretation, things like that.
And sometimes some of the cards will kind of relate to each other.
Oh,
something.
100%, absolutely. One of the funniest things to me is a few of the cards are like action and drive. Like, you know what I mean? That's a very big force in the deck that I read specifically. And I've had circumstances where action and drive will be just repetitive over the full spread. Just like, hey, I think I know what you need to focus on right now.
Yeah, there's a theme there.
If it's upside down, you might need a little more motivation. You know?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a theme when that happens. It's something they gotta pay attention to. Like, okay, this is what you gotta do. Otherwise, you're gonna keep getting the same information every time.
And I think
So-
a big thing too that people tend to like to hear when I'm reading is that every reader has a different interpretation. You know, every reader has a general idea. And I've seen like the solid correlation of every reader. If you're going to like 3 readers at a fair, right, which is intimidating to say the least. You're doing a lot of readings that day. If you're getting the same outcome as each reader, there's a correlation in that.
Yeah.
You know, there's meaning for what we're all saying.
Yeah, there's something they have to pay attention to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you're getting the tower 3 times, I mean.
Yeah. There's a thing they need to pay attention to
just
and
a little
then
bit.
follow up on that. Yeah. Now, do you read just cards or you do other kinds of readings as well?
I do other kinds of readings as well. Started with cards, of course.
Okay.
And I'm moving more towards mediumship readings, and I'm actually I'm looking into, I should say, I'm talking to Reiki practitioners so I can get certified in Reiki.
Okay.
Because I feel like a lot of my readings, again, they kind of go off the rails sometimes, and to that I say, energetic healing is so vital to who I am as a person. I would love to be able to extend that to another person. I actually met an incredible shamanic Reiki instructor last year. It was funny, I was bartending at that point. She had absolutely no idea who I was. She just reached out and was like, this is gonna sound weird, can I grab your hand? It's like, yeah, sure, whatever, why not? You can grab my hand, it's fine. She grabs my hand and she just looks at me and she's like, you have very strong intuition. You need to be a Reiki practitioner if you're not already. And of course, I'm shocked at this point, like, who put you up to this? Am I getting punked right now?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And it turns out she's a shamanic Reiki instructor in Providence, and she's actively talking to me right now about how I can get into this community, how I can get into this practice. And truthfully, I do see myself eventually opening a business of some sort, like a physical business, if you will, rather than just a traveling tarot reading situation, which is what I do. And having Reiki, having energy healing and things of that nature, as well as bringing in other people who do the things that I'm not necessarily trained in or don't necessarily have the knowledge of.
Yeah. If somebody wants to reach you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, is it okay if I give my phone number and email? Is that all right? Or
Well,
Yeah,
the
phone number and
number's
email,
okay.
yeah.
phone number, yeah.
Yeah.
So typically I respond through Facebook and phone number. Phone number, please call me. It's okay. It's a personal phone number. I tell people all the time, if you need to message me, if you need to just text me and call me and rant about something that is going on in your life, you are allowed to. So my phone number is 401-323-1514. And I tell people, I'm Catie the tarot reader. You can talk to me. You know what I mean? That's not my business name, but
Right.
you can just call me Catie. It doesn't matter.
What do you call your business?
Oak Barrel Tarot.
Oak Barrel Tarot.
Yes.
So how'd you come up with that name?
Oh, it's funny. I like it a lot. So I have been in the craft brewing industry for a few years at this point, and one of the things that really started my tarot reading business in person, as opposed to, during the pandemic where it was a lot of just FaceTime and things like that, was going to breweries and sitting at oak barrel tables where they were aging craft beer.
Right.
And as I was practicing, I was trying to come up with different names. Originally I was like, Horace and something, whatever. And one day I was just sitting in my room and I started writing down names, just, bonkers things that don't make sense, that maybe I can click them together. Oak Barrel Tarot. It just made sense. It was sort of a thing that I'm passionate about already, combined with something that I'm already, a community that I'm already in, being the craft beer industry.
Yeah.
And the other sort of irony to it is that in my undergrad studies, I was a historian. Again, studied a few other things, but historian at its core. And one thing that I studied was ancient brewing techniques and how medicinally that translated to modern times.
True.
And it was one of those things where I was like, interesting, form of healing, other form of healing, I'm going to combine the two, and Oak Barrel Tarot was born. And it's my pride and joy. I adore it. I also enjoy explaining the name because it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not so simple two-word answer.
Yeah, right.
We just came up with it, but
It has levels. It's a cheesecake. Now but-
So you've been doing this since what, 18, 19 you said? So
Yes.
6 or 7 years though, so you're still kind of a newbie.
I'm a newbie. I've been practicing for myself since 14, but
You're seasoned, though. You're not.
Yeah, there's that.
Oh, I try. And one thing that I always tell people is that no matter how new or old you are in this industry, you are always learning.
Yeah.
If somebody says they are the expert to go to, the person, I always say to them, well, have you heard of this? No? Oh. So we're all learning then.
Yeah.
And I'm never not going to learn.
Right.
If I'm reading my deck in a certain way and someone's like, oh, you should try this formation, I'm going to try it. Why not?
Oh yeah,
Education,
right. Different
learning.
different layouts. It's very interesting how the energy can shift.
I'm a firm believer that learning is the root of all healing. And if you can learn how to do something and you can really properly ingrain it into your practice, you're going to have such a better time than just, as I like to say, flying blind.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
always learning.
So with the mediumship, does it sometimes come through though when you're reading cards?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
110%.
Sometimes they can be really insistent though, huh?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I tell my favorite story? Okay, so recently I had a pop-up, and typically spirit will come through to me at the most inconvenient time, which is a classic, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and this massive group of women celebrating another woman's 40th birthday party comes up to me. So sweet. Oh, we're 3 sisters. We want to get a reading. Can we get this done? Sure, why not? Let's see where it goes. They sit down. It was the birthday girl and her middle sister.
So this was the same reading? at the
Same
time?
reading. So it's the 2 sisters. I was reading one sister at a time, but they wanted to be with each other just for moral support because
Okay.
they had never really had a tarot reading. You know,
Sure.
they're going off the assumption that is a fun birthday activity.
Yes, right.
So they sit down, their other friends are out, you know, doing their thing. And I'm reading, and I call it the snap. There's a certain moment during my reading when I know someone has come through. And I just look at this woman in the eyes, the one I'm reading, and I was like, all right, tell me about the blue prom dress and tell me about the handmade corset that you were, or not corset, corsage that you were wearing. Tears start welling up. I'm like, oh boy. I'm seeing a yellow rose surrounded by like bluish light, almost like dyed daisies or something, like a very odd flower combination to have. And she starts crying at this point. She's like, yeah, my dad made that for me. He also helped me make my prom dress. And he passed away 4 years ago from some form of cancer, I believe. And it was one of those things where I was like, is his name Joe? And she's like, you know the look.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm gonna go get my other sister really quickly because we have something to say to this man. You know,
Yeah.
very sweet, very funny.
Yeah.
And it was just such a heartwarming experience. And I feel like to an extent, you sort of need that confirmation of, I know I have this ability, but this is what makes it worth it. You know?
Right.
And it was
But you have to have an
beautiful.
enormous amount of courage
Oh, yeah.
initially
Oh, yeah.
to bring it out.
Absolutely. And, you know, I always say I am still learning that. You know, my mediumship, my tarot is very strong. I'm still learning my mediumship, though. It's taking time, which is, again, always learning. And there have been times where I'm like, there's something coming through, but I don't have the, again, confidence to bring it up because it's sort of a mismatched jigsaw puzzle of confusion, right? But then there's other times where it's just full-blown confidence and I just go for it. And I find that that's been the trend more often recently.
Yeah.
So I think I finally sort of jumped over that hump, if you will, and I'm just full-blown.
Well,
Depends on who's guiding you.
Yes.
Some are more intuitive themselves
Oh, yeah.
in how to explain
Yeah.
things to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, the confirmation definitely helps with the confidence. So the more that you know you got right by the clients, like, well, this is what I'm getting, you know, and so that definitely helps with like, you know,
Oh,
getting
yeah.
better at it as well, though,
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
Some of the saddest readings I've had have involved animals, actually. Because I'll be sitting down and someone will
Yeah.
just sit with me. I actually had a sort of interview reading, if you will, for a spot at a psychic fair recently. And I sat down with the person who was interviewing me. So it was essentially, I was doing a tarot spread for them and we were talking. And I just, again, snapped and I paused. I said, did you have a schnauzer by any chance? And she just drops and is sobbing. Mind you, I did not know her in any way, shape, or form. Again, my big rule is tell me nothing about you before I read you.
Yeah.
So she just starts sobbing and she's like, that was my schnauzer who passed away 2 months ago. And it was just, I could see him plain as day. It wasn't just the clairvoyant aspect, it was the visual aspect. And he was just hanging out, like, why doesn't my mom notice me? You know,
Yeah.
I'm hanging out right here, come on.
Yeah.
And she-
Right.
And it was so funny. And the irony in it is that she's also a psychic. So
Yeah, right.
she couldn't see her loved one, not because she wasn't letting him in, but because
Right.
of the grief that was so deeply ingrained in her. She didn't want it to be a falsification of her abilities.
Yeah, and it's hard to pick up stuff for yourself, too.
Oh,
That's the thing. So my
absolutely.
own mind gets in the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like we think we get something, but we're not really sure if that's really what it is, or if it's just something that we want to know, or want to think
Oh,
that
yeah.
we're hearing or getting.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So there's that though
Absolutely.
too. The grief is a big deal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but you know, once you get past the grief, it's a little bit easier to pick up on that loved one that's
Yeah.
trying to come through.
Exactly.
So,
and during my mediumship readings, oftentimes people will call me a tarotist, so a therapist through their tarot.
Oh, I like that.
Because they're like, you're a neutral party, right? I'm just like, oh, I'm trying. Like, no, but I am. So
Yeah, right.
it's
We try to be unconditional.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been blessed by animals coming through.
I love it.
Yeah, they have so much better energy than a lot of people, though, don't they?
Oh yeah. But you know, it's funny when you wake up and you hear barking. You're like, is that real or where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have to figure out whose dog is this? You know, like.
Yeah.
But it made a lot of sense for me because I had 2 Shetland sheepdogs growing up, and they were my absolute everything. And there's a photo of me that my mom took years ago where I had just really started tarot reading, and the dogs are on either side. And that's when I started looking into like Norse paganism and things like that. And there's a drawing of Freya with her 2 cats, and it's like the exact same position that I was sitting in.
Oh,
Interesting.
And it's so funny to me because I see that as sort of a confirmation that I was meant to be on this path.
Yeah.
Even though like I know, it's nice to have the confirmation once in a while. And I use that photo for everything now. But it's
it
just
works
it's sweet.
though, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you only work at fairs when you read, or do you do phone stuff too, though?
Everything.
Or video?
Everything. Yeah.
So you do the video as well. Okay.
You know, fairs. If somebody wants to meet me at a cafe or something where they just want to sit down in a space where they feel very comfortable, I meet them there. Or to an extent, if I feel safe enough to go to their house, you know,
Right,
and sit
right.
down.
Right.
Absolutely. But my big sort of precaution for folks that I'm reading is, I need you to know I do carry pepper spray. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I do
Right.
make sure that I'm
You're
safe.
being aware.
Yeah.
I'm very aware because, again, I studied forensics in college, so I'm
right.
just so aware that
Right.
the job I do could be considered dangerous
Right.
if I'm to go to the wrong house, like if I'm going to the wrong place. But again, that's why I like to do a lot of little brewery pop-ups or cafe pop-ups
Sure.
and places where I can meet somebody in public, get to know them first, and if they so choose to book a private event, then I have the confidence to go in and say, all right, I know this
You
person
know
at
their
this
energy. You know
Exactly,
that.
exactly. I've denied private events before for that exact reason.
Right.
I've just said, you know, I apologize. This just doesn't feel
Right.
like it's meant for me.
Right,
You know,
right.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you have to again trust those inner thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, trust your gut because I mean
Trust your gut,
that's
trust your guides.
that's your right. Well, your
It's
guys aren't gonna
yeah.
steer you wrong. No.
And it's fun because it's sort of respecting myself. You know what I mean? Again, it also, I always tell people, at its core, I never did this for money, ever. I did this because I love it. I did this because I heal people. It's so funny. If I could go back and do it all again, I guarantee you I would have been a therapist of some sort. And I mean, I am. You know, I'm just
Right.
a
Yeah.
therapist with a different
Right.
set of guidelines.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
exactly. So.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to be careful because, like, if you're like reading a couple at different times, one might ask her what she said in the other reading. I've had
Oh,
that happen
yeah.
myself, though. So I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Though
No.
there's a form of ethics we have to go by, though, too.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
if they want to share, that's with them.
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
But yeah, so that's come up for you a couple of times too, huh?
Well, just a bit. Yeah. You know, I always say I abide by sort of HIPAA laws when it comes to my readings. Not just the tarot code of ethics, if you will, but I really do function
privacy,
like a
yeah.
therapist. I have
Yeah.
privacy. I don't tell names. I tell stories, like,
Right.
you know, as an example, but I'm never giving out a
Yeah.
name. I'm never giving out a location, ever.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, that's not for me. That's for someone else. That is a very private bearing of emotions that they really need to unpack themselves. If they're going through something traumatic, there's absolutely no reason why their aunt or their uncle or their cousin who's with them should, or their parents even, should ask me, so what did you say? You know,
Yeah,
what went on in the reading?
Right.
Well, you can have your own reading,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I'm not,
Right.
no. And that actually stems to a different aspect of my readings where I don't read anybody under 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Which is I've taught folks, not read, who are like 16 and up, where I feel comfortable where I'm like, you're interpreting yourself. I'm just teaching you the arcana, and we're gonna go over the suits, and we're kind of like discuss intuitive tarot versus oracle versus, you know, things
Right.
like that.
Right.
But I just find it's a lot more, I have a lot more peace of mind when I'm reading somebody who's 18 plus because they can go out and get a tattoo so they can come to a reading. You know, it's a similar thing. So.
If you can join the army and put your life on the line.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. 13-year-olds, I feel,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to teach a child tarot. I don't want to interpret for a child.
No,
so.
no, the reasoning hasn't developed yet.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they have feelings and they interpret.
totally.
They interpret things,
Yeah.
but they may interpret something.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
not the way it was intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say that as somebody who was also like starting to practice when she was like 14. So it's funny. It's like you can self-practice, just don't practice for others at that point. But
Yeah. So how can people get hold of you if they have questions or anything like
yeah,
that?
so
Try that again.
yeah, totally. So my phone number, it's 401-323-1514, and I'm on Facebook. Can I say my business name, or would you prefer? Probably not. I'm going to avoid that. But yeah, my phone number.
Yeah,
So
people can still get hold of you that way, though.
exactly.
So,
So,
yeah.
one more time, it's 401-323-1514.
Okay.
Right.
So if you found anything interesting that you want to check out through reading,
Right.
check her out.
Yeah,
Right.
text me. You know, if you're curious about what your pet's up to, let me know. No, feel free to text me. Feel free to call me.
Right.
All right, so you have two favorite decks that you work with the most.
Oh, absolutely. So this is my Healing Oracle deck. It was gifted to me. So it's the Doreen Virtue Healing with Angels Oracle deck. This is just my day-to-day deck. I pull this for myself almost every single day, and I just find that it is such a positive influence in my life. It's just also very reaffirming. You know, I look at it and I can say, okay, I might be stressed out today, but at least this can help me sort of unpack. You know, there's a card that says music, so that sort of tells me I need to go and listen to music and drive around or something.
Yeah, and refocus
Exactly.
from whatever's been bothering you.
Absolutely. And then this deck is my everything. You know, this is what really created my business. And it's Paulina Cassie's Spirit Song Tarot deck, and I love it.
So say the name again slow.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Paulina Cassie's
Yes.
Spirit Song Tarot deck.
Right.
And
Okay.
it's
Great.
just phenomenal.
Because there are
Just
some people
the
that
design in the back is amazing.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
beautiful little
some people
animals.
that may be watching the show, maybe
Yeah.
like my age, and won't catch all the words as they run on fast. So
Okay. I'm a Virgo, I talk fast.
could I just hold that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
Well,
all of
thank you for
Right.
coming.
Of course.
For coming. So, yeah, so she's a newer person that designs the cards?
She is.
Okay.
She has 2 decks out right now. So she has the Spirit Song deck, as well as I believe it's a Fairy Oracle deck. So this is her only tarot deck, if I'm not mistaken. But if I am, I apologize.
So these are
She might be
basically
coming up with more, though, I'm sure. at some
Oh
point, yeah.
gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
all animals. I mean, this
Yeah.
is wow.
There's no people.
That's very interesting. And excellent, beautiful renditions.
I adore them.
Look at that walrus.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's probably be good for like a younger kid, though, too. Trying to get into this as well,
exactly.
too. For that
Ooh,
interest in
the
it.
owl.
It's
Yeah.
also really good for parents, I've found. So there's a rest card in there. I forget which suit it is, but it just says rest and recovery and comfort and things like that. And it's a bear sleeping. I always get that for new moms, always. And it's
Yeah.
so funny. 'cause
I can
it's
see
just-
why
hold
that
it?
you
Oh
do,
yeah,
yeah.
feel free if you want to hold it.
Would you like to?
Oh, well,
Yeah, so it's just mama bear.
Yeah.
That's always, I'm like, so you're mama
Oh,
bear,
wonderful.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is a lot, though, when someone's new, though, and being a parent.
I can
though,
only
so it's a
imagine.
lot, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so how long have you had that deck for?
Oh goodness. 2.5 years?
Oh,
3
okay.
years?
Oh, that was the first animal I saw
That's a
on my
success
journey.
card.
That was
Yeah.
the first animal I saw on my
No way.
was a bull elk.
Oh, really?
Oh, I love that card.
Yeah.
One of the 2 cards that come to me the most, I guess they're my cards of the year, are the 10 of Cups. So like the success, family, things like that card. And then also the Wheel of Fortune, which I've always seen as sort of new possibilities are coming.
So what would the bull elk signify when you see that card?
Which one?
success.
Success.
It's,
Okay.
and
Well,
also it was the very first animal I saw when I was
In your journey.
being worked on. And
Okay.
what happened was the bull elk, the woman who was working on
hold
me,
it?
said that that has to do with strength and endurance.
It's a very masculine protecting
Powerful.
card, powerful, things like that. You know, you're shedding your horns.
You know what? I'll tell you what sealed it for me. It wasn't just like I saw. It was like I saw the bull elk, like from the top of the bottom of the neck, like the nape up.